Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Small Talk podcast. My name is Katy Fairman, and since the last episode, quite a lot's happened. We've had a triple header of races in Japan, Saudi and Bahrain. Don't know why I've done them in that order, but we're going to talk about them in the podcast. I've also been to Miami for the Formula E. Can you tell with my non-existent tan that I picked up? That was a great time. Went to the Homestead Speedway, which is where NASCAR and IndyCar have been in the past, which was really cool. Managed to hold a baby alligator at some point, so I will not stop going on about that. Maybe we can talk a little bit about my experiences at Miami later on in the podcast, but that's not why you're here. We're here to chat all things Formula One, so grab yourself a cup of tea and let's get into it. So it seems like a million years ago now, but the first race of the triple header that has just ended was the Japanese Grand Prix. And during the last podcast, we were talking about the fact that this Lawson-Tsunoda swap had happened, and we got to see our first real preview of what things were like with this switch around back in Japan. Honestly, it does feel like so long ago. It's mad to think that was literally 3 weekends ago. But I always love racing at Suzuka. I know that the 2025 race was a little bit boring. I know there was a threat of rain, which didn't really arrive, and we've seen some absolutely crazy wet weather races around that circuit before. But yeah, it was a good race. We had Max Verstappen winning, which I feel like is a significant thing and also not going to be the first time we see it this season. I know that coming into 2025, everybody was saying how McLaren were this inevitable force to be reckoned with. They were going to win everything. They had the better car by miles. But I always feel like people will severely underestimate your Verstappens or somebody like a Fernando Alonso who can just get the most out of their car regardless of what it is that the car is like. So yeah, we had Max Verstappen setting that incredible pole position and quite quickly ended talks of complete McLaren dominance in 25. It was a nice win for Max as well, being at Honda's home race, the last race that Honda and Red Bull Racing are going to have as one. Obviously Honda going to Aston Martin from next year, which is an interesting development. And yeah, it was good to see somebody different winning and showing that it is possible. I feel like this year, obviously McLaren have been talked about as being the favourites. There's no underestimating that. But there were also talks that there could be your likes of Mercedes, your likes of Ferrari, and of course Red Bull challenging them. And we have seen potential from Ferrari and Mercedes, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But yeah, it was nice to have Max and Red Bull up there, meaning that it's not just going to be a complete papaya dominance throughout the rest of the season. And yeah, the pole position lap from Max was just incredible. Watching that live was amazing. I think from memory, Crofty almost assumed that McLaren pole was a done deal. And so the fact that Max was able to come through and deliver that just shows why he is one of the GOATs of Formula One. But it also meant that we had some conversations around what Max does next. Obviously, this was more surrounding the Bahrain Grand Prix, but people were talking about, well, what does Max do next if things don't improve with the Red Bull? Obviously, he's come from a period of dominating the last 4 years, getting the Drivers' Championships every single year since 2021, and now he's got a car that doesn't look particularly easy to drive. I know, like I said before, he's proving that he can drive whatever is put underneath him. But yeah, there was some questions surrounding his future at Red Bull. This isn't the first time we've heard them. We had these exact same discussions when, for example, Lewis Hamilton announced that he was leaving Mercedes, and they were saying that Toto Wolff was really keen to bring Max on board and maybe his future could be at Mercedes. But now these conversations are being talked about where he could potentially go to Aston Martin. And for the moment, Max has got a contract until 2028, I think it is off the top of my head. And I can't see him watch this age so badly. I can't see him going anywhere drastic anytime soon. I think that he'll at least try and do the 2026 first year of the new regulations and see how things are without Honda there. It could well be that maybe he realises he wants to be a part of Honda's future in F1 more than he realised. But obviously Honda have had a great run of form recently, but things don't always go smoothly. Remember the McLaren Honda days? Like, that was an absolute disaster, one of the worst partnerships in F1's history. So there's no guarantee that Honda will go into the 2026 regulations with the best engine. But yeah, obviously Adrian Newey is now at Aston Martin as well. Fernando Alonso, as much as I would love it, can't race there forever. So yeah, there's a lot of question marks around what the future could look like for Max, especially over this triple header. I feel like that's been kind of the one constant theme that's been discussed. But Max, being Max, is very quick to silence any kind of questions or any kind of doubts that he won't be there. Although, you know, Helmut Marko also added that he sees it as a genuine possibility that he could leave if they don't provide him with the infrastructure in the car that he deserves. But I also don't feel like that's particularly groundbreaking news. I mean, if your car's bad, yes, you're probably quite likely to risk having your driver go and sniff out a better opportunity with a different team. So let's see what the future holds with that storyline. We also had Liam Lawson out-qualify Yuki at the first race in their new colours. I mean, one thing to consider is that Liam obviously has a lot of familiarity with the Racing Bulls. It's a team that he was in last year and the year prior when he was covering for Daniel Ricciardo. So I'm not, thinking, oh, well, this is proving that he should have stayed at Red Bull. But yeah, that was quite an interesting thing that happened, and something that I think quite a lot of Lawson fans and maybe general motorsport fans wanted to see as a bit of a two fingers up to Red Bull. And then on that Friday of free practice, there was a huge crash for Jack Doohan, which, my goodness, was certainly a very scary shunt. Obviously, he took a little while to get out of the car, which I'm guessing perhaps he was slightly winded from it. Maybe it was just a shock. But yeah, going off at turn 1 there, bringing the session to a red flag. And it emerged that the accident was as a result of Jack not manually shutting his DRS flap coming out of turn 1, which is something that they have to do themselves rather than it being automated. And it proved a very costly mistake for Jack. I'm still unsure what's going to be happening with his future at Alpine. I know that he has had quite an anonymous first 5 races of the season apart from this crash in Suzuka, and that's not really the highlight that you want from starting in your F1 career. But yeah, there was lots of speculation that perhaps he would be given these first 5 races and see how he gets on, and then he might be replaced for Miami. Obviously, Miami is the next race coming up in next weekend, so we'll have to wait and see what happens there. But yeah, I don't know. I just feel like he's not really, unless I'm forgetting something really obvious, which could well be it, because like I said, I've been sort of back and forth in different championships over the last 3 weekends. So it could be that I missed something quite important, but I can't really recall anything spectacular that he's done during that time. So yeah, unfortunate for him. I hope that they give him a little bit longer, my goodness, at least half a season to kind of get familiar with the team, with the car, and show his potential. But yeah, for Jack, that crash obviously extremely costly, both in terms of probably confidence, but also financially for Alpine, because it looked like a significant rebuild was needed on that car. And then my final point for Japan was that the race was a little dull, which is a great shame. Like I said, Suzuka is a circuit that has been part of F1's history for a long time. There have been so many iconic moments in Suzuka. Championships decided, like Senna and Prost, 89 come to mind, as well as lots of others. So yeah, it's a shame that it didn't deliver. Perhaps it's the fact that it's now been moved to springtime on the calendar, so the weather isn't quite as unpredictable. It used to be that every season we'd go there and the race would be held around September, October time, and it would pour it down with rain. And there were countless examples where qualifying couldn't even go ahead on a Saturday because the weather was so bad. So we had like a bumper day of qualifying and the race all on the Sunday. Things are a lot safer, I would assume, now in the springtime. But yeah, it was a slightly uneventful race, which seems to be, unfortunately at the moment, the theme of the 2025 season. But let's move things on and talk about the Bahrain Grand Prix, because that one was actually quite exciting. Formula One returned to Sakir, obviously the place that we have pre-season testing for round 4 of the season. And before we get into talking about the Bahrain Grand Prix, I have a confession that I have to tell you. I have not seen the Bahrain Grand Prix from start to finish. I've seen the highlights, and even then my memory is kind of patchy, but I have a really weird reason for not watching the race live, and that was because that was the weekend that I was in Miami. And on the Sunday after the Formula E race, me and a couple of the lads that I work with decided to use our last day to explore the Everglades, which is a crazy part of the world. And we went to an alligator farm. And I posted a picture of this on my story, which I might get Paul to add in here. But essentially, I was on an airboat which went through parts of the Everglades, and it was the most fun I've had in a really long time. I sat in the front with these guys that I work with, and we had seen people coming off of this airboat experience, and it kept saying everywhere, like, be warned, you get wet or you might get a little muddy. And all these people that were coming off the boats beforehand, we were like, they don't look too bad, they look fine. And so we were a bit ignorant, and we were the first in line, so we had the best choice of where to sit. And naturally, all the guys were like, let's go to the front, because they also had stickers that said wettest seats on them. And still we're like, oh, it's not going to be that bad. And so 2 of the guys, Jack and Vinny, had bright white T-shirts on. And I was going to wear like not a full white outfit. That makes me sound like a 90s boy band member. But it would have been like predominantly white. But I thought better, and so switched for dark clothes. And thank goodness I did, because we got absolutely soaked. We got covered in mud. The guy on the back of this airboat is doing like 360 spins, going mental. And yeah, like I had white trainers on, which I tried my very best to avoid them from getting wet. But a couple of the guys took their shoes off, especially if you're wearing like suede trainers and stuff, they would have been absolutely ruined. But yeah, we got off the boat, and I wish we'd taken some before and afters, because it was so funny. Like just mud all over my face. I managed to swallow some muddy water at one point when like I wasn't expecting it. And yeah, it was wicked fun. But yeah, the white T-shirts for the other guys were completely ruined. And so yeah, do you know what? To prove I'm committed, I was trying to follow updates on my phone on Twitter whilst this was going on. But very quickly realised that was a terrible idea. Because imagine it's like, and Lando Norris gets P5, and then my phone, whoop, straight off, and it's now at home with the alligators. So I thought, Katie, as much as watching the Bahrain Grand Prix is important and keeping updates, it's not worth potentially having an alligator eat your phone over. So yeah, and my brother, bless him, recorded the Grand Prix from start to finish for me to catch up on, but it's been such a mad few weeks since coming back from Miami that I haven't had a chance to yet. But we're still going to talk about it. But yeah, in case there are some significant things and you think, Katie, why didn't you mention that? Like, give me a break, please. But yeah, let's start with the masterclass from Oscar Piastri then, because he achieved his first career hat trick, which is pole position, fastest lap, and the win. So he joins a very exclusive list of current F1 drivers that have got this. I think top of the list has to be Lewis Hamilton. I'm sure Fernando Alonso's on there. I think Lando's on there. Charles is on there. There's a couple of others that I'm most likely forgetting, but I did a graphic for it for one of the companies I work for, so I remember that there were a good couple of drivers on there. But yeah, Oscar puts himself among those, and yeah, it was just a really cool, calm and collected race from him. And I really think that Oscar is so severely underestimated when it comes to his abilities, and the fact that he's able to keep such a level head and be so cool with how things unfold and his general performances. It kind of reminds me of like a Kimi Räikkönen or a Mika Häkkinen, like one of the flying Finns, in the sense of how he approaches stuff, except he's a little more chatty, thankfully, a lot more sarcastic, and got a bit more humour in his responses when he's talking to the media and such. But he just doesn't seem to let things really get to him, which is a huge strength, I think, compared to somebody like his teammate Lando Norris. And I love Lando for this, but he is so kind of vulnerable with how, if he's had a bad weekend, for example, like he was saying after Saudi yesterday, I don't make life easy for myself and I messed up and all this kind of stuff. Whereas perhaps we've not seen that side of Oscar yet because he hasn't really made that many mistakes, but he just seems to everything kind of washes over him like a wave, if you know what I mean. So I think that is a seriously impressive and important characteristic that Oscar has. An amazing job from him. Made it look almost easy. First win for McLaren in Bahrain, which is obviously a circuit that has a lot of importance and significance to them. We also had George Russell doing bits again, which again, I feel he is so underappreciated. I keep seeing all these memes, and I feel like I talked about it on the podcast before, that he, just shows up, gets P3, does nothing. But actually, the fact that he's able to get the performance out of the Mercedes that he is just so impressive. And it's just continuously written off. And I really feel like George is doing such a stellar job. He might not be, getting pole positions and winning, but he's certainly qualifying really high and still collecting silverware after silverware. So a really good job from George again in Bahrain. And then talking of Lando, it was a bad qualifying for him. I think he ends up qualifying down in 6th place. Pierre Gasly as well, qualifying in P5 that race. What a great thing from him. Not great. And then obviously getting the penalty, being out of his pit box, which is something that we see time and time again. It's actually kind of a common occurrence when you come to think of it. Deserved the penalty for that, because if you kind of let one person off, then it just becomes a blanket thing and everybody wants to have a free pass. So right to get that penalty. But managed to recover to P3, another podium, which is good, and some extra points for him. But I just feel like, and I might touch upon this in a little bit when we talk about the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, that he really needs this break that's coming up. Triple headers are so brutal for everyone: drivers, team bosses, engineers, mechanics, members of the media. I'm not a fan of a triple header. Double header is fine, but a triple header, I feel like, and especially in circuits where the weather is so hot and it's such an exhausting event, I think that they need to seriously reduce those. But at least now he's got some time to take a breather before Miami. And obviously Miami is a circuit that he has lots of happy memories at, place of his first win last year. So I'm hoping for his sake that he can come back feeling revitalised next round. The final race of the triple header, as we have kind of addressed, was the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. And I know that we just had that little moment talking about Lando, but what a nightmare for him in qualifying, crashing out. Not the thing that he wanted to be doing when he's got a championship that he is fighting for, and especially when his teammate is showing such dominance at the moment. I feel like it's quite an uncharacteristic mistake for Lando, in the sense of having a crash that has, written off any chance to compete in Q3. Obviously, he's had his fair share of spins and crashes before, so it's not like completely out of the blue, but still a costly mistake for somebody like Lando. And then when it came to the race, I mean, I just knew something was going to go down on that first turn, especially with Max and Oscar next to each other. We know Max loves to push it like as much as he can when it comes to racing, and we've seen history of Max at the Jeddah Corniche circuit doing just that with maybe the likes of Lewis or other people. So it's I just had a feeling that this would happen, and sure enough, he made this move with Oscar. Should he have given the position back? I think, to me, that makes the most sense. But Max, being the stubborn racer that he is, He didn't do so. I don't know if Red Bull suggested that he should give the position back. I'm not sure, but he was smacked with this penalty, which ultimately ruined his race and any chance of a race win. So yeah, it's for me it was a fair penalty. His response afterwards as well, speaking to the media, it was amusing, don't get me wrong. I was listening into the press conference, recording it for this publication that I'm working with. Luckily, there are a couple of other people recording the same thing, because if I had to submit my audio, you would just be able to hear me in the background laughing at all of Max's answers, because he's so cheeky. But yeah, his opinion was that he didn't want to speak about the penalty any more than he needed to, because he didn't want to get in trouble. And it wasn't a case of like the swearing ban that had come into effect. I'm sure that Max is intelligent enough to be able to argue and defend him getting a penalty in a way that doesn't involve a swear word every 5 seconds. I think it's more that if you are seen to be criticising the FIA, which obviously is the people giving the penalties, in any way, you'll get yourself into trouble. So for him, he was like, I just don't want to talk about it. He addressed the race by, I started the race, had turn one, and then it was the end. And that was it. It went really fast, trying to describe what happened during the Grand Prix. But yeah, seems a missed opportunity for Max and Red Bull. But that's also, I feel like, really on brand for him. So we'll see what happens. And, Christian Horner, I don't want to say give credit to him, because I don't want to do that, but he will defend Max Verstappen until the ends of the earth. He showed up again to a media session with a screenshot of Max's move printed out, which he's done multiple times now. And I wish I had somebody that was that defensive of me and my actions in my life, honestly. But yeah, that was what Horner was doing. And yeah, Oscar, there you go, won again. He once, like I said, kept his cool, calm and collected, I feel like is Oscar's tagline when it comes to me talking about him on this podcast. But he now has 5 Grand Prix victories, which is the same number as Lando. And I put this out on Twitter that they both had 5 Grand Prix wins each. And I know that was going to, upset probably some of the Norris fans, because you've also got to remember that Lando's been there since 2019. And during that time, during those, 7-8 seasons, like McLaren have developed so much. And Oscar's only been there for 3 years. This is his 3rd season in Formula One, whereas Lando, like I said, started in 2019. So, of course, it's not going to be fair to compare their experience and like the ratio of Grand Prix wins. I think I wrote down somewhere that Lando has finished ahead of Oscar on, say, like 38 occasions compared to Oscar finishing ahead of Lando on 16 occasions. So, that's probably more of a fair statistic, but you can't deny that in the history books, they are tied on Grand Prix victories. And Zak Brown is remaining adamant of his view that they're both number 1 drivers. There is no number 2 at McLaren. And for me, I just think this is going to end in an absolute disaster. We've had drivers in the past, especially at McLaren, where we've had what you would define as 2 number 1 drivers at the same team. Thinking back, we had Niki Lauda and Alain Prost as teammates. You had Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost as teammates. You had Jenson Button and Lewis Hamilton together. You had Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso, all of which I would define as both being number 1s in their team. So it's just an unwritten McLaren rule that they have. But for me, looking from the outside in, it just feels as if there's going to be a moment that comes that's going to really have a serious impact in that team. Zak Brown was talking to F1 TV after Jeddah yesterday, and he was saying that he sees that there could be, it's more of a when they come together than an if. And he described it as a non-event, which for me seems like a bit silly to sort of say, yeah, we know they're probably going to come together and have a crash, but it's going to be a non-event. Hello, Zak Brown. Need I remind you of Mercedes at the Spanish Grand Prix in 2016? That is something that really defines that whole kind of era of the Mercedes team there, when the both of them came together on that first lap. And it really was kind of like the beginning of the end of the Bro-Sadies, Rosberg and Hamilton friendship, if you want to call it that in the loosest terms, and fully signified war. And I can imagine that working within Mercedes at that time was incredibly uncomfortable, because it was clear that they had the best car and that only one of them was going to walk away with the driver's title. In the end, it was Rosberg. And then look, he went and quit the next day, essentially, because he knew that there was so much sacrifice put in there that he wasn't going to be able to do that again to himself and his family. Call it cowardice, call it whatever you want. But yeah, it made for entertainment from us as fans, but ultimately quite an uncomfortable internal experience. And yeah, I just feel maybe this is the way that McLaren is going to go. I'd be really interested to know your thoughts. Be sure to leave me a comment down on YouTube if you're watching there, or reply on audio, or find me on socials. Like, I would be quite keen to know if you think that things will remain nice and civil at McLaren, or whether you can see things taking a very sour turn. But yeah, it's not great vibes. It reminds me, thinking of Formula E, that at Jaguar TCS Racing at the moment, you've got two incredible drivers in Mitch Evans and Nick Cassidy, and they were announced as teammates from last season, and they're both so brilliant that it was evident straight away, like, how are you going to navigate this? Because they both want to be number one at that team. And Jaguar's approach was essentially let them race. And what ended up happening were numerous uncomfortable radio calls made between the two, saying, like, he's not playing fair, they're not doing this, like, what are you going to do about it? And yeah, it led up to the finale in London, where both Nick and Mitch were in contention for that. Both of them would have been their first driver's title. And you could argue that Jaguar were the strongest car. And you know what happened? Pascal Wehrlein and Porsche won the championship, because they just couldn't make a decision that benefited one or the other. And so they left empty-handed when it came to the team's championship. Neither Mitch, neither Nick got the crown. They ended up getting the team's title, but what they have done is essentially caused like damage to the inner team and the trust that was there. I hear that Mitch and Nick didn't speak to each other over the whole of the summer break. So yeah, it's then made for a really uncomfortable inner team dynamic. So yeah, we'll see what happens. I mean, I know that we're only on round 5 of 24 races, so there's a long way to go yet, but I don't know. I feel like I'm going to come back to this podcast episode and see and be like, I called it, but I don't think I'm the only one. I feel like there are quite a lot of us that can see that this is likely to end in tears. Going away from the triple header and all that Formula One chatter, on Sunday, the 27th of April, there is quite a significant anniversary that has happened, and that is that it has been 50 years since the 1975 Spanish Grand Prix, and that means it's 50 years since Lella Lombardi scored the first and only time that a woman has got points in a Formula One Grand Prix. And I say points loosely, it was half a point. And actually, it was the first time that half points were awarded in a Formula One race. And it was given half points because of a really awful accident that happened during the race, where a car's rear wing essentially snapped and the car went into a pool of spectators. 4 people died. It was just absolutely dreadful. But yeah, that's something that you can kind of read more about. Like, it's actually a really, as much as it's a totally harrowing and really dark F1 weekend, it is such an interesting story to see how many drivers almost called that this was going to be too dangerous. There were some drivers that completely boycotted the event. They arrived at the circuit. I can never pronounce it properly. It's a circuit that Formula One no longer races at after this weekend, in 1975, obviously. But it was in Barcelona, and it's one of these circuits that it's got so many umlauts and accents on it that I'm just worried I'm going to completely butcher it. So let me see if I can pull up the name of it.
A few moments later.
Right, we have Googled it. I've listened to it on Translate, and it sounds as if it's Montjuic or Montjuic. which sounds more French than does Spanish. So apologies if you're Spanish and you listen to this and I've absolutely butchered your lovely language. But this is the circuit. It was basically a street circuit in the most picturesque location imaginable. There were fast speed corners, there were low speed corners. Lots of people have ranked it as one of the best street circuits Formula One ever raced on. So the fact that it ended in such tragedy is a real shame. But yeah, this was like I said, the 1975 Spanish Grand Prix, and Lella Lombardi was participating. She was running in 6th when the race was understandably ended because of this awful accident. And yeah, that remains the first and only time a woman has ever scored points in Formula One. After Lella Lombardi, there were another 3 women who entered Formula One Grand Prix. None of them actually qualified for the race, so they never started the races. And I was writing a piece for Motorsport magazine about the fact that it's this 50-year anniversary, and realistically, how far are we from seeing a woman in F1 again? And I know that the topic of women in motorsport is something that is spoken about again and again and again. And for lots of reasons, I think it's good that we carry on this conversation because, you know, I am a woman in motorsport. I know I'm not going to be driving a Formula One car anytime soon, but I still think it's important to discuss it, highlight, you know, potential disadvantages and things that there are for other women. But really, what's important is that the people that are in their jobs are there because of their talent and not just because of their gender. But yeah, I was writing this piece and it kind of depressed me because I really feel that, and this could be a controversial statement to make, but I feel like we've actually taken a step back from the possibility of a woman participating in Formula One anytime soon compared to like even 10 years ago. I mean, I was looking back at the people that were involved in F1 teams in positions that, you know, were significant, like your test or your development drivers. And let's go back to 2014. So obviously Susie Wolff, who we all know and love, now is the managing director of F1 Academy. She was given the opportunity to take part in 4 free practice 1 sessions between 2014 and 2015 as a test and development driver at Williams. And I know people might be quick to be like, okay, well, she only got that job because she was, you know, with Toto. Whatever. The point is that she became the first woman to take part in a Formula One weekend in over 2 decades when she took to the track at the 2014 British Grand Prix to do FP1. Annoyingly, an engine failure brought her practice session to a halt after just 4 laps, and she wasn't able to fully demonstrate what she was capable of. But she got given another opportunity at the following race week in Germany, and she was only 2/10 off the time of Felipe Massa, who was a very experienced driver at that point. He had 11 Grand Prix victories, I think I'm right in saying, during that when she was, you know, teammates with him in that practice session. So to be just 2/10 off of him, I think is highly impressive. And like I said, she did another 2 after that and then announced her retirement from driving at the end of 2015. But that position of a test and development driver at a Formula One team is not something that another woman has currently in Formula One. And actually looking at who else was involved in those senior positions, you know, a decade ago, there were so many more women. We had Simona Di Silvestro, who was known as an affiliate driver at Sauber. I'm not quite sure, like, if you get many other affiliate drivers, it's a bit of a weird definition for a role. But she also was there with Sauber. And like I say, in the space of a few months, you had Simona Di Silvestro taking part in tests in Valencia and Fiorano, which is Ferrari's track. And she was doing that with Sauber. You had Susie taking part in Grand Prix weekends with Williams. And, you know, a couple of years later, Tatiana Coldren also came in. She was with Sauber as their development driver before being promoted to a test driver for the 2018 season. We also had Carmen Jorda, who was... She's certainly somebody that divides opinion, but, you know, the fact is that she was appointed as a development driver at the Lotus F1 team. across the 2015 season. Before that, we also had Maria Di Velota, who secured the role of test driver at Mauritius in 2012 until she had her awful accident, which, if you're not aware of that, I will let you look into that. But it was a very sad story, and it could well have been that she was the person who took part in a post-season rookie test at the end of that season, but unfortunately never got the chance to, and so it was Susie Wolff that was the one a few years later to come in and break those records. But yeah, looking back at that, there were so many women who were in those positions, and you look at the current teams, and apart from somebody like Jessica Hawkins, who is an advisor at Aston Martin, Jamie Chadwick as well is now an advisor at Williams, there really aren't that many women in those positions. And I know we've got things like F1 Academy. We've got more eyeballs on women in motorsports, especially within F1, than ever. And I think it's great what F1 Academy is doing. I'm more than happy to support it. I think it's amazing to see so many young women get these opportunities to support Formula One through the support series. And obviously, for the 10 drivers that are supported by F1 teams, they have been given incredible opportunities to get up close and personal within teams, given the support, given the infrastructure that I'm sure they are really appreciating. You know, people like Ella Lloyd, who won at the weekend in Jeddah, she is part of the McLaren development program, and that has its perks, but it's not the same as being a development driver that, you know, you've got people at McLaren that have those kind of roles. Somebody like Oliver Turvey, who is their simulator driver, for example, it's not a role that's similar to that. So yeah, I think it was a bit of a sad reality looking back to 10 years ago. And I was really trying to pinpoint, okay, well, who could be the next woman in Formula One? And if you had asked me this 6 months ago, I would say perhaps somebody like Abby Pulling. She has her relationship with Alpine. She'd been there for 3 seasons. She absolutely smashed it in F1 Academy last year. I'm so proud of her. She was never off the podium throughout the whole season. Like, how insane is that? She was just miles better than everyone else in an already very talented field. And I thought, you know what, maybe this is a chance. I think she was like 2021 when she finished F1 Academy, which is just about the right age, because as depressing as it is, you know, you're not likely to have somebody who's 25, 26 going to be given that opportunity. Like, you've kind of really got to find them young and nurture them and let them grow, and so that they will be there to have the opportunity when they're younger. But then, you know, she's ended that relationship with Alpine, and I know why. I'm not going to tell you why, but she said in the statement that after lengthy discussions, they decided not to continue it. But it seems such a huge disappointment that really felt like that could have been the opportunity to, you know, for Alpine to put her in a car for a free practice session. I know that they've got a very long list of talented drivers on their books. Paul Aaron, Franco Colapinto, Kushmaini as well. So, you know, she would have had quite a few people to fight for the opportunity. But yeah, it just, I don't know. I wrote this piece. If it's live by the time this podcast goes out, I will link it down below. Give it a read. Let me know your thoughts. But yeah, I just, it just seems such a far off option at this moment in time. I don't know what it is. I don't know if F1 teams are too nervous or what it is to support the next generation of talent and put these women in these important positions, or if it's the super license system that's obviously come into effect. I know I spoke about this on a previous podcast, but when I spoke to Jamie Chadwick 2 years ago, who you could say maybe looked the next best option for somebody to get at least an FP1 opportunity with Williams, I said to her, how many super license points do you have? And she didn't know. And to me, that is just crazy. And Jamie Chadwick also said that she didn't feel ready to take on an FP1 session, which for me, I was like, seems a bit of an odd thing. You think that she'd be like chomping at the bit to get a chance to be behind the wheel of an F1 car. But there will be, whoever this woman is that is the one that makes it into F1. And I really do believe that it will happen. I feel like I have to believe it will happen, because otherwise that's the most depressing reality ever. They're going to have to be made of some like tough stuff to be the one to, be that kind of trailblazer. So yeah, it's 50 years is a long old time. And the fact that we've also got so many talented women in other categories, like looking at ELMS a few weekends ago, we had Jamie Chadwick winning on her prototype debut. We also had the Iron Dames winning their category. We also had Hamda and Amna Al-Kubaisi on the podium in one of the support series. So like from one weekend of racing, we had 6 women, I think that's right, my maths is right, 6 women on various podiums from one endurance sort of weekend. So, it's not as if there's no women that are available and eager to race among men. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like there was a little bit of a all over the place rant, but hopefully you understand my kind of passion behind it. Because that was a bit of a sad reality writing that piece. And I don't want that to be the case, obviously. I'd love it if we could have a bit more diversity and see women up there in the pinnacle of motorsport. But for now, I need to grab one of the teams and say, just promote someone. Like, nurture them and love them and let them start small with a simulator drive or, simulator role, something. Because at the moment it's just very bleak looking at what the options were compared to 10 years ago. Like, how does that make sense that we've gone backwards? Surely we should be going forwards. Anyway, I'm getting heated talking about this. I need to have a sip of my tea and calm down. But yeah, I'll see you on the other side of this quick little break while I have a breather. Okay, deep breaths. I've suitably calmed down, and I feel like that is quite a good place to end this week's podcast. As ever, thank you so much for listening. If you've got this far, well done. You can have a virtual sticker. But yeah, I've really enjoyed being back in the studio. It feels like it has been the longest time, but I will be back next week for another episode. So if you have anything that you want me to talk about, maybe that I've missed from this week's, let me know. I'm always happy to hear from you. And I hope you have a wonderful week with no F1. Go out there, touch some grass like me, and it will be a great chance to, see friends and family again, because I haven't done that in quite a while. But yeah, take care of yourselves. Love you lots, and see you next week. Goodbye.